Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome everyone to the webinar with Al-Isharah. My name is Dr. Wajid Akhtar. I'm the Assistant Secretary General of the Muslim Council of Britain, and I'm very pleased to have an organization that I've heard a lot about, but I'm afraid to say didn't know enough about until hopefully tonight. With me are our three special guests. We have Sister Astra from AlIsharah, Brother Azad, also from AlIsharah, and Brother Tom, who will be very kindly signing for us this evening. So the first question I guess I'd like to ask each of our panelists, and I'll start with Sister Astra, is do you mind telling us a little bit about yourself? Before we get to AlIsharah, it's nice to know the people behind it.
Of course, yes. Salam, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to join this. My name's Astra Kader. I'm a trustee of AlIsharah and have been for just over a year. I was working with AlIsharah previous to that. Prior to that, I was in their BSL focus group, the Deaf focus group. So we'd feed back on some of the work that was going on there. And I was involved in that for about 2 years prior to being a trustee. I'm originally from Lithuania, and I moved here in 2003. In about 2004, I became Muslim. So at the moment, I've got some. I work part-time with some hearing children in an after-school club. I work with kind of 50-50. So I work with the hearing community and I work with the deaf community. So my parents and my family are all hearing, and I'm deaf. I went to a boarding deaf school, a residential deaf school, and my husband is deaf, and I've got hearing children, and that's me. Nice to meet everyone.
Very nice to meet you too, and that's a very fascinating life story. I mean, a short life story, but you know the move over from Lithuania to here and becoming a Muslim and working with two very different sets of people. Fantastic. Brother Azad.
Salam, brothers and sisters. I hope everyone's well. First of all, I just want to say thank you to Muslim Council of Britain for inviting us to be part of this. My name is Azad Hussain, and I work with AlIsharah. My role is the head of operations, and I've been doing this role for around about 7 years. And I've also been working towards becoming a qualified interpreter, which I can say I now am.
Excellent.
And that's it.
Excellent. I'm sure that's not just it. I'm sure there's a lot more you're not telling us. We'll drag it out of you eventually.
Yes, yeah. I'm hearing, but I'm signing tonight. I'm choosing to sign because that's how our organization communicates with the communities we work with. So it also helps raise a bit of awareness of British Sign Language for everyone.
Very important, isn't it? A really useful skill that many of us should develop, and you know, I think it's nice to have it on the agenda so that people can work towards it, inshallah. Okay, so we heard a lot about AlIsharah. What is AlIsharah?
So AlIsharah is actually an Arabic word. So it's actually comes from the Arabic meaning of the signs. So it was set up around 8 to 10 years ago. And the aim is to provide Islamic education, Islamic services for the deaf community, and provide full access for brothers and sisters who have are deaf. So yeah, I can talk more about our services. We've got many services. We do things like every Friday, we have an interpreter in to interpret the khutbah at East London Mosque. So they listen to the khutbah, what the imam's saying, and they interpret that for the congregation and the deaf congregation that attend. So we have deaf brothers and sisters who come to the mosque every Friday. And Astra just wants to add that AlIsharah also have a sign. So they have like a sign name, as it were. So we met someone, a deaf lady or a deaf mum many years ago when it was established. I think it was back in 2007 or 2008. So there was a deaf mum in around 2007, 2008, and she wanted her child to learn about Islam, and the child was deaf, and realized there was very little access to any kind of Islamic education for their child, which is obviously something that's very important. So AlIsharah was founded from this mum and a small group who wanted to provide education for children, which yeah, is lovely. And we still have contact with the mum who helped set us up.
Oh, I love, everyone loves a nice origin story, right? And that's as good as you're going to get. Someone who needed something fixing for themselves, but went out of their way to help set up a system to fix it for everyone, inshallah. And so because it was part of the origin story, do children have a special place in Al-Isharah? Is it more child focused?
We have a focus on children, but we also have adult programs as well. We have Islamic schools at on Fridays and at the weekends. So we have an Islamic school in Birmingham, we have an Islamic school in Redbridge, and we have 2 other schools as well. So we cover quite a wide area of the UK. So there are online schools as well. So there is a focus on children, Islamic education in that aspect of our work. So we create resources, we run the schools. And Astra is just adding as well that at the moment, the teachers and the children, we have profoundly deaf groups and we have partially deaf groups. So some of the groups, when they're online or whether they're face-to-face, we have teachers who can provide access for both of those groups. And we also have lectures regularly where we bring in an imam or a sheikh to give a lecture. And that's also run for adults as well. So that's more kind of in-depth teachings for adults. We have quite a lot of people attend those as well. And we also have a teacher who teaches kind of 6 different sessions and gives people a certificate at the end of it to show that they've attended the course. And really, the most important project we've got going at the moment is the translation of the Quran into British Sign Language, which is a project is really amazing to see. So we can allow our signing brothers and sisters to access the Quran in British Sign Language. We also ran a deaf Hajj back in 2017. There was a deaf group went on Hajj. It was all organized by AlIsharah. It was absolutely lovely. The deaf brothers and sisters had a fantastic experience, and they were, they had an inclusive experience, so they could access everything that was happening. And yeah, it was really fantastic to see.
Amazing. I mean, the variety of activities is inspiring, really. And I really picked up on that point that you said that you had separate groups for, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, yeah, we also we have a deaf kind of marriage service as well. We have deaf social events where we run barbecues. So we also have some more informal services, because deaf people can often find themselves quite isolated at home, especially if they've got hearing families and things like that. So we also run some social groups as well, just to add to that.
Thank you. That's really useful to know, because it's not all just studying and learning. It's also having fun and socializing. So I'm really pleased to hear that, as someone who doesn't like studying so much. But I wanted to pick up on a point that you made, which, to be honest, it didn't even occur to me until you said it, Sister Astra, which was you have almost separate groups for the partially hearing and the profoundly deaf. And this is just a really good example of how, if you're not part of the community, you don't really understand the challenges of the deaf or the partially hearing community. You almost kind of lump them all into one category. Do you find that that happens? That that there's kind of stereotypes made by the community, by people about the deaf individuals?
Azad, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it happens quite a lot. People who are profoundly deaf, or people who are hard of hearing, they actually have different communication needs, and they are often lumped together. So often people who are profoundly deaf will communicate via British Sign Language. And then people who are hard of hearing will make use of hearing aids or implants and communicate via lip reading and spoken languages. And some people use a bit of both. But a lot of people also have stereotypes around what they think deaf people can do or can't do. So what we try and do is break those barriers down and break the stereotypes, and try and just remove those barriers that are put in place. And partly that's done through education. And one example is we do deaf awareness workshops. So we work with various organizations, businesses and charities, and provide deaf awareness. So help them become more aware of the community out there that people don't see. And it means that people become more aware, and people then go on to learn BSL, and we have a BSL course that people get onto, BSL being British Sign Language, so people can start to learn how to do some sign language as well.
Amazing. And apart from the stereotypes that people have, are there any other challenges faced specifically by deaf Muslim children? Because I can imagine that there are a lot of challenges faced by anyone who is deaf or hard of hearing, but any specific ones that are faced by Muslim children?
Yes. So there are lots of barriers, like you said, faced by a lot of deaf children and deaf adults, but especially for Muslim deaf children, there's no access, or very little access, to any Islamic education, Islamic teachings. You imagine that any kind of schooling, even weekend classes, are not accessible. So it's not until a lot of Muslim deaf, a lot of the Muslim deaf community grow up, that they start to begin to access Islam, start to access the Quran, start to access their religion, and they have to go on courses to do that. So being able to educate deaf children is really valuable, because it's a huge barrier for deaf children having no access to Islamic education. and there's very little resources around for them. And people, they're often, deaf children are often just told no, or to kind of just go away, or to stand to the side, and they don't understand what's going on. They only observe what their families do, but don't understand what's happening. So it's really nice to be able to give them that information and that understanding. And there's sign language, giving them access to sign language and Islamic signs as well, and having access to the BSL Quran as well is great. There's challenges for everyone, but additionally for deaf children. And Brother Azad just wants to add to that. We, from the recent census and different studies that have taken place, we know that about 90% of deaf children are born to hearing parents. So you can imagine that there's a bit of a gap there. They don't often know how to communicate with their deaf children. It's often quite a shock to them when they find out their children are deaf. They don't know British Sign Language. They're not sure how to communicate. So there's some huge barriers for deaf children, even just being at home. Within the home environment and within the family. I've seen it. I've experienced it being, seeing deaf children who can't communicate with family members, and they can't express themselves in a way that a hearing child can. And that in itself causes higher risk of mental health conditions as they grow older. They don't feel part of their communities. And it's something that some of the deaf community have kind of learned to accept to some extent. So our aim is to break those barriers down.
Yeah, it's really sad. I mean, actually thinking about the suffering or the exclusion that so many of these children, I mean, I know obviously it doesn't matter what age you are, if you're feeling excluded, but for children to feel excluded, even sometimes from their own family, it's heartbreaking actually to think about it. I read recently that there's 50 to 75,000 deaf children in the UK, by some estimates, and up to 1 million people who may be hard of hearing. So by rights, this means that there's almost no community in the UK that doesn't have members of their community that are deaf, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a huge Muslim community, and actually a lot of East Asian countries and people of a Muslim background actually have a higher incidence of deafness. So there's actually a higher proportion of deaf children and deaf adults often within our communities. And it's linked to there's various reasons for it, from cultural reasons, passed through history and genetics. But yeah, there's a higher incidence of deafness within our communities. So I think it's especially important for us to raise these issues and to make efforts to provide access and give equal access, access that hearing people would expect deaf people should have it too.
Well, I guess that's when you get to the heart of why we're doing this. Not only because we want more people to know what the great work that Al-Isharah does, because there are far too many organizations like yourself that work in the shadows but should really be championed, and it makes us proud. But to ask the question, what can we do to help? What can others do to help in this situation, whether it's Al-Isharah directly or just generally in our communities? If you had a wish list.
Well, I mean, we appreciate being invited here. That's one step towards making a difference. Engaging with organisations like ours. Spreading the word through social media. Just getting the word out, and information really is really key. Building that awareness and just getting that message out there.
Brilliant.
Yeah, and brother, as I'd say, I think it's a really good question. It's really important for us to understand the deaf community, and for our communities to appreciate that they're there, in the isolation and the struggle. A lot of deaf people don't necessarily want sympathy. They want to be equal, and they want to feel an equal part of our communities. So I think if more of our community were to take that first step and learn some British Sign Language, or take part in some deaf awareness, and just have more awareness about these people in our communities, I think that would help. And also we have quite a large deaf Muslim community in the UK. So if you see these organizations, or you're following them, then go and say hello, make an effort, offer your help if you can. Anything people can do would be great.
Thank you. I have a hope that if we can have a few organizations start off by setting a good example of inclusiveness in our conferences and our webinars, having BSL interpreter as standard in our khutbahs like Isan and Mosque is doing, and in our talks, it will be a good first step.
Yeah, it is. As I'd say, it is actually. It's Tom often at Eastland and Mosque, along with another interpreter. But yeah, if we can get those kind of provisions set up, then it's a great step towards inclusion.
Exactly. There's a lot of people who have BSL skills and know BSL Sign Language, and they, if we can just organize them efficiently, and also the younger group, they want to learn new things. This is a great new thing to learn. It's a great skill.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if we can, well, at the moment, we've focused on creating resources as well for deaf children, so that they can continue to be used. But we need those younger people involved as well.
Absolutely, it's a big this is our community, and we're missing out. It's not just them that are missing out. They're obviously missing out, but we're also missing out on their skills and their talent, their energy and ideas. And the BSL Quran it's a beautiful example, even though I'm not the target audience for that. But just hearing that it's being made, that it exists, is it's inspiring, and it makes me feel like it makes me proud to see it. And I think we all have similar experiences when you see a translation in a language. You think someone went through the effort and did that, and it shows it's accessible to a new community. Are there any final points that you would like to make? And I'm happy to go on as long as you guys want. There's no time limit, but any points that you guys would like before we close?
Astra? I don't know, Astra's asking if Azad wants to mention the website and point everyone in the direction of the website. I think we're going to have a website, and there's potentially a BSL Quran app in the pipeline. Yeah, absolutely. But as I was saying, you're right. We are currently developing an app for the BSL Quran, so that'll be available. And we have the AlIsharah website that people can take a look at. It's lists all our services, and we have like the website has videos on it, things like how to perform wudu, how to pray salah. And this is all, accessible, because hearing people, they learn that growing up, they learn that as a standard, and we need to make sure that our deaf community have access to that, and they're able to worship in the same way that our hearing brothers and sisters are. So yeah, we believe in Islam, and we believe it's the truth, and we want to make sure that no one is excluded from that. So yeah, take a look at the website.
Thank you. I've put the website as www.alisharah.com, AlIsharah.com in the group chat. And I just want to finish. If anyone has any questions, we can please do ask. But I'll just finish the recorded section of the webinar by saying how much of an inspirational meeting this was with yourselves. And our hope is that with ourselves here in the Muslim Council of Britain, but also with other organizations, we're going to try and do better to be inclusive and to share, to be with you all on that same journey, inshallah. I really love the BSL Quran and the Hajj idea. Fantastic. Whoever came up with that should get like a gold medal, because it's just, yeah, it's genius, mashallah.
Alhamdulillah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and we love the work we do with the deaf children and with deaf adults, and we're always open to work with other organizations as well. So thank you for inviting us.
You're very welcome. Jazakallah khairan. Subhanallah, hamdaka nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.